Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's lesson, we are going to look over anatomy, whole body systems. So we're going to go over neurons, the cardiovascular system, lymphatic, respiratory, and more. So please like and subscribe for more content so that I can keep creating videos. And now let's just get into the lesson. So we're going to start off with the respiratory system and kind of just like knowing the lungs, knowing what to look for, and the different kind of like anatomical structures that you guys should know. So you have your right and your left lung. You know that this is going to be the left lung, this one on this side, because it has this cardiac notch over here. It kind of looks like a crescent moon. So this over here would be your cardiac notch. And it basically just creates a space for the heart to sit in so that the heart can have room to kind of be situated within the body. Next, we have your different lobes. So over here, this top portion, this is going to be your superior lobe. So I'll put an S over there for that. And I can also write it down. Superior lobe. And then on the bottom, this portion right over here, this is going to be your inferior lobe. Sitting right over there. And the two lobes are separated by what is known as an oblique fissure. So if you guys see that there is kind of like this line over here that separates the superior and the inferior lobes, this line is known as your oblique fissure. Right here. Now moving on to the right lung. The right lung also has a superior S for superior and an inferior lobe. On this picture, you can see the inferior lobe right over here. A little bit hard to see. Inferior lobe. But the right lung also has this middle lobe over here, this middle section, and that is known as your middle lobe. Super creative naming, I know. So that is your middle lobe. And it also has the oblique fissure, just like on the left side. Your oblique fissure would be over here, separating the middle and the inferior lobe. So again, oblique fissure. But it also has another fissure on top of that. This one over here that is separating the superior and middle lobes. This one where my pointer is at, that is known as your horizontal fissure. Horizontal fissure. Right there. Now, moving on, we have your diaphragm and your diaphragmatic surface. So this kind of like dark red portion here at the bottom, this is your diaphragm. And this is the part that kind of like helps with your diaphragm. This is the part that helps with your inhalation, expiration, all of that, kind of just like the whole process of breathing. Your diaphragm has a diaphragmatic surface, which is basically just the part of the diaphragm that is directly touching the lungs. So I make this text box bigger so you guys can see. The diaphragmatic surface, parts of the diaphragm directly touching the lungs. So that is what the diaphragmatic surface is. If you were to take this model and kind of like flip it around, you could see that there is probably going to be a white part that is connected to this red over here. And I would say that that would be the diaphragmatic surface. Next, you have your trachea. This light blue portion over here, you can see different like cartilage rings or the tracheal rings. That over there, that would be your trachea, and that is where air is being able to come into your lungs so that you can then breathe. So from the trachea, you're going to have two branches, and I like to kind of like draw a little demonstration here on the side, like this. Almost looks like the beginnings of like a peace sign. If I were to draw a circle over this, it would look like a peace sign. So this part right here up at the top, that would be your trachea. And then the two bottom parts where it separates, so over here and over here, these two parts are your bronchi, specifically your primary bronchi. Later on, closer to the respiratory unit, because there is a respiratory unit, we're going to learn the difference between like primary, secondary, and tertiary bronchi. But for now, you kind of just need to know that these are named bronchi, this region over here. Um, so bronchi, and then eventually they will keep going and separate into bronchioles, and then go into your alveolar ducts, alveoli, and then the lungs will inflate, and that is how they get oxygenated. So that is everything for the lungs. Pretty much everything you need to know. Lots of the names and terminology is the same on both sides, so it's very easy to remember. Moving on, we're going to now look at the heart. So we're mostly just going to be looking at this middle region over here, this middle heart diagram. You can zoom in, this heart right over here. So you just need to know the difference between your atriums and ventricles for this unit, for this beginning first unit. So over here, this first one over here, this is going to be your right atrium. So if I draw a very long line over here, mind my very unstraight line, but this over here is going to be your right atrium. And then it is going to go into your right ventricle. A good way to remember is that ventricles kind of look like a V. You'll see like over here, it looks like a V. So this portion over here would be your right ventricle. Now you may ask, how do you tell the difference between right and left with the heart? So there is a couple ways you guys can pick whichever one works best for you. One way to remember it is because this blue vein over here, this is your superior vena cava, and this blue vein down here is your inferior vena cava. You can see that there are like these two circles in the right atrium, and that is because these two vena cavas lead to the right atrium. So wherever you see the vena cavas, that's how you know that they are on the right side. So this is going to be the right atrium and the right ventricle. Now, another way to remember it is that this pointy part of the heart over here, this pointy part, it is called your apex. So again, that is apex like that. And the apex is always on the left side. So if you can remember that, if you can remember that the apex is pointing to the left side, then you can remember that this over here would be your left atrium and left ventricle over here. So speaking about that, this circle over here, this is your left atrium over here. And the left atrium basically is going to receive oxygenated blood from the lungs. So the right side is going to be deoxygenated blood, and then the left side is going to be oxygenated blood. And now, right below it, on the same as it was on the right side, below the atrium, you have your left ventricle. So this portion over here, left ventricle. And then from the left ventricle, it's going to push the blood through the semilunar aortic valve and then to the rest of the body. So pretty cool how the blood flow works and the different like oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. For now, you guys just need to know your atriums and your ventricles and how to differentiate right versus left. So moving on, we're going to go to the lymphatic system now. Lymphatic system is really fun because it's just pretty simple. The main thing that you have to know right now is your lymphatic nodes versus lymphatic vessels. So lymphatic nodes is just going to be like little circles or little dots. For instance, right over here, that would be a lymphatic node, like that. And then all of the green lines that you see, so these lines that are going down this person's arm, around their armpit and their chest, and then throughout just their whole body, green lines is going to equal lymphatic vessels. So over here, lymphatic vessels. And another important thing to know is that this over here, this big, weird looking structure, this is actually a zoomed in look at a lymph node or a lymphatic node. So this whole thing is going to be a singular lymph node. You can see in the lymph node, you have your afferent and efferent vessels, and then you have like your germinal center, which is this white part over here. That would be your germinal center. A singular one of these pyramids over here, that would be a lymphatic node or a lymphatic vessel. Pretty cool, but we get into more detail on that when we get into our endocrine unit, so not right now. The next thing that you guys need to know about this is your thymus. This is like the last part for now that you guys need to know about the lymphatic system. Your thymus is going to be kind of like where your neck is, so like over here. It's going to be this structure right here. So that is your thymus. And sometimes in anatomy, they want you to know the different hormones. If you guys want me to go over the hormones of all of the different glands and everything like that, then let me know in the comments and I can make another video on that as well. All right, moving on. We now have this lovely structure that kind of like shows your oral cavity as well as going to your esophagus and stomach and intestines and then out. So this is like your digestive system. So if we were to zoom in over here, this whole portion where the mouth is and where your food would be, kind of like this little opening over here, This would be known as your oral cavity. Oral cavity. And then you have your esophagus. The esophagus begins over here. It also is kind of like starting over here, and then it branches out with your trachea being this region over here. This is your trachea, and then this at the back is your esophagus. So that's why, like, if you ever choke, it's basically because food is going down your trachea instead of your esophagus. And so then the muscles that are there are like making you cough and trying to push the food out of there because you don't want the food going into your respiratory system. You want it going into your digestive system. So this whole region over here, that would be your esophagus. And then it is going to lead into your stomach. So you have the cardia of your stomach, which is this beginning portion over here is your cardia. And then you have the fundus of the stomach. The stomach basically just refers to the top region of your stomach over here. So this would be fundus of the stomach. You also are going to see this word fundus pop up multiple times. There's also a fundus of the uterus, which is referring to the top of the uterus. In general, it just means top of and then blank, whatever organ it is being applied to. And then the rest of it, the rest of the stomach is just the body. So, very simple. If you see inside the stomach, you're gonna have this like wrinkly texture, all of these little like lines and divots over here. That is basically just signifying the rugae. So, rugae. Rugae is trying to increase the surface space of the stomach so that it can like expand as you are eating and digesting food. And so it starts wrinkly, and then as it expands, it's going to get more smooth. Now you have your pyloric sphincter, which is going to be just like this region over here, kind of like where the stomach goes into the duodenum. This region over here is known as the duodenum. So this middle region is called the pyloric sphincter. And I will write it down because it has a little bit of an interesting spelling. Pylorus sphincter. And then this one over here that it leads into, this is your duodenum. The duodenum is a part of the intestine. And when we get deeper into the digestive unit, I will go through the three separate parts of the small intestine because there is a duodenum, ileum, and jejunum. I find duodenum is really fun to say. It kind of reminds me of like dodo birds. And if anybody ever grew up watching Wild Kratts, then the episode with the dodo birds was definitely one of the most memorable ones that I remember. So, moving on, now you have your small intestine. Over here, this like whiter region, all of this is your small intestine. And so then, for that reason, you can deduce that the larger one wrapping around it is going to be your large intestine. So over here, wrapping around, this is all your large intestine. Over here, large intestine. Now you are going to go into your rectum over here, and this is basically where all of the waste is finally going to be able to be removed from your body. So rectum, which then leads into your anus, and this region over here is going to be your anus, and it is kind of just like the opening over here. So that is everything for kind of like the digestive tract when you are processing food. You do have a couple accessory structures that help with digestion. The first of which is going to be your liver. So this whole dark red organ over here, this is your liver, and it is very blood concentrated, which gives it its dark, rich red color. Then you have your gallbladder, which is this green circle over here. If you were to take this model and like flip it upside down, you would be able to see more of the gallbladder. But the gallbladder is always green, both like on the models and also in your own body. It is actually green. If you ever look at a cadaver, then you will see that the gallbladder is very green, kind of like a grassy color. So this helps with like bile secretion and kind of just like getting rid of all of those toxins. So that's your gallbladder. And then the very last accessory structure over here kind of looks like a corn on the cob, but it just has like a ton of little like fat cells and stuff like that. This is going to be your pancreas. So if it has that bumpy texture and it looks like a, some corn or something, then that's how you know that it is your pancreas. It lies in between your stomach and your intestines. So it's kind of like deep over there in your body, a little bit more posterior towards everything. So that was everything for digestion. And now, very last part, we are going to look at a neuron. This is actually one of my favorite kind of like models to look at. I think it looks really cool. So you have your soma. The soma is basically the body of the neuron. So this whole region over here, this is going to be your soma, or the cell body, in other words. And then you have all of these little like projections that are coming up off of it. All of these projections over here, these are going to be your dendrites. So these guys are some nice looking dendrites. And then you have your axon hillock, or axon hillocks, however you want to pronounce it. It's this kind of like muscly looking triangle structure. And it basically kind of helps signify that that is the axon and it's the beginning of the whole axon. If you ever look in histology, that is a really great way to differentiate dendrites versus axons because they do look very similar. So this little projection that is coming off of it, this would then be your axon. Right over here. And then below you see this structure. This whole thing is also an axon. So this whole thing is your axon. Oof, that was a terrible line, but I hope you guys get the point. This whole thing is an axon. And then you have this kind of like yellow bubbles around it, or yellow capsules. So this whole portion over here, that is your myelin. So right over here, the myelin helps with insulation, and basically the thicker your myelin and the more healthy the myelin is, the faster those neuron signals can get across and be passed from neuron to neuron. This little bump that you see over here on the end of the myelin, this is going to be a Schwann cell. So Schwann cell right over here. And then at the very end, usually you have kind of like your axon terminals, but this model, it's cut off and you can't really see any more of it. They just didn't add the axon terminals to this specific model. But you can see this wrapping or this encasing in kind of like this grayish color over here. So this over here, that would be your endometrium. Endometrium. And it is kind of just like the wrapping that goes around your neurons. So that was everything for this video. I hope you guys found it informational. Again, please like and subscribe. Leave any questions, comments, concerns, video recommendations in the comments and I will get back to you. I also do offer tutoring, so if you would like to get some online tutoring, then please just say so in the comments and I will look at it and I will, exchange emails with you guys so that you guys can get that necessary help if wanted. Again, thank you so much. And I did make a video on the female and male reproduction system, so please go watch that as well for your studying if need be. Thank you so much and have a great day. Bye.